Hello and welcome to this special edition of Cajun Hikes. In this video, you will see an interview that I recently conducted with Captain Jack from Captain Jack Takes a Hike. He thru hiked the Bayou State Trail in the summer of 2025. And in this interview, we talk about his experience and the potential of the Bayou State Trail moving forward, along with some suggestions that he makes for not only for us in terms of what we need to do to provide improvements along the trail, but also for any other future hikers as well. So sit back and enjoy the video. We'll make note though that unfortunately at around the 15-minute mark, the video portion stopped, but I do have the entire audio for the duration of this interview. I am really excited to have on board with me this morning Captain Jack talking about the Bayou State Trail. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, man. Good to see you too. Good to be here, talking about the Bayou State Trail with you. I'm excited for everything that's been going on.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, it's been a heck of a ride since we got this thing launched. And, of course, having you hike the trail last year was a big help for us and getting a lot of exposure out about the trail. And so I'm really excited about talking to you today to be able to get that thru hiker perspective. Of course, I've hiked most of the trail myself, but I've done it totally different, just a lot of day hikes. So obviously it's a totally different experience when you're out there day to day hiking this thing. So just, before we get into it, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm from Louisiana, born and raised. And it was a big part of what got me interested in the trail. I didn't really get interested in into hiking until around 2020. That was my first big thru hike. And I did do a couple of smaller hikes when I was younger. I remember me and my sister did this little overnight hike in the Smoky Mountains back in like 2016 or something. And that was, I guess, what really got me thinking about it. But what ultimately brought me to the Appalachian Trail in 2020 is my drug usage and sobriety. I was working on getting off of methadone, and that was really challenging for me. And something kept telling me that, if I was on a long walk or hike in the woods, that would be what, I would need to take that last step. And in 2020, the beginning of 2020, I had my dad drop me off in Georgia at the beginning of the Appalachian Trail. And that's what really, kicked off my obsession with this long distance hiking stuff. And it's a new addiction for sure, but it's a healthy addiction. So, and the last time I hiked the Appalachian Trail, I know me and Bob, a guy that was hiking with me for a little while, we were talking about any, long distance trails in Louisiana, and we weren't aware of this yet. I think this was 2023 and 24. And then at some point in 24, I found your website for the Bayou State Trail and got really excited that we had something going on, because we got the Florida Trail, the Arizona Trail, the Colorado Trail. So to find out that we had a trail system going all the way across Louisiana was really cool to me. And it was, even though it was still in the beginning stages, it was something I really wanted to be a part of. So after that last Appalachian Trail hike, whenever I got back to Louisiana, I started thinking about it a lot. For one, it was like a lot more accessible since I was back home in Louisiana, as opposed to, going way out of state to some other trail. And also the fact that it was, new in the beginning stages and I could be a part of something developing, that was really exciting to me. So.
Yeah, it was. And I remembered when you had posted your announcement that you were going to hike the trail, I was just floored because, I'd watched you on the last AT thru hike you had completed. And I didn't know what you were going to announce. And when you came out and said you were doing the Bayou State Trail, I was like, oh, yeah, I got to get in touch with this guy. And I mean, within from the time you posted the video to when you and I got together in person here in Lafayette. It was like less than 24 hours.
Yeah, that's cool how that worked out.
Yeah, you called me. You're like, hey, I'm coming to Lafayette. You got some time? I was like, sure, let's do it. But no, it was great to be able to meet you and also be able to help share the experience with you along the trail. So that was one of the things I really wanted to get into as well with you this morning about the Bayou State Trail. As we know, it's only 2 years old. There are people that have hiked this trail, but we don't know how many have through hiked it. And so you're the first one that we know of that has, but also too that we were able to actually assist from start to finish. So just tell us a little bit about the whole experience from when you got up to North Louisiana till you got all the way down to the southern terminus.
Well, it was definitely a different experience for me after hiking, the Appalachian Trail and the Long Trail and, some other really developed shorter trails. It was a lot different. I was used to far out, which is, really, we're going to get into that in a little bit, I'm sure, but
Mhm.
far out's just really developed. It's really, it makes it, foolproof, hiking for dummies when you have that app. So, coming from that and from the Appalachian Trail that's just so developed and has so many footsteps on it, to this newer trail system was a lot for me to take in. And using Google Maps as opposed to far out, there's a lot of stuff I wasn't really ready for. If I'm being honest, I was, I kind of looked past a lot of it when I was thinking about doing this trail initially. Um, and also I decided to go ahead and do it in the summertime. I think, maybe May and June. I'm not sure exactly the months I did it, sometime earlier summertime. But my thinking was to kind of help bring awareness to the trail, the new trail system. If I did it in summertime, typically people on YouTube are more interested if they're watching you suffer. I know I got a lot more views whenever I was hiking through wintertime on the Appalachian Trail, or it felt like it. Um, but also I was just really impatient. I was sitting around not moving as much as I like to, and waiting until wintertime to hike the trail just you know, didn't seem logical to me. I was ready to get moving again. And I think that really played a big role in how the trail ended up being for me. It was, a lot of times it was just miserable out there in the summertime in Louisiana, hiking on a lot of pavement too. So that, that summertime experience with the map app that I was using, and just a lot different than the longer hikes that I was used to, but it was really cool still. It was a new experience. Kind of drawing a blank here, but that was like the biggest differences that I noticed, from the Appalachian Trail and the Long Trail were the map app and the climate, the temperature. Um, I remember just about every night whenever I got done hiking and, got set up in my hammock, I would sweat until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I just would keep sweating and everything in my hammock would get wet. That was a challenge, and the blisters on my feet. I remember a couple days in, I probably had 6 or 7 blisters on each foot, or maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. A lot of blisters though. That was way more blisters than I'd ever experienced on the Appalachian Trail hiking every day. So a bunch of differences, but there was also a bunch of similarities too, just being able to that free feeling of being able to get up and hike every day and stay active all day long. That's something that I don't feel like many people get to experience. People get up and go to work, then they come home. Some of them might go to the gym after for like an hour or something, but it's not quite the same as getting up and putting a backpack on and walking all day long. Um, so that was really cool. That's what I was, really looking for, what I was really jonesing for whenever I decided to get on. So in a lot of ways, it was about this new trail system and helping to develop something, but in a lot of other ways, it was just my selfish needs. I needed to be out there again. I needed to be taking a long hike again, and it's going to be the same if I hike it this winter. Um, Definitely want to help and do as much as I can for the trail, but I'm getting so antsy over here. I've been working 7 days a week, and if I can get a break and take another month off to hike this trail again, it's going to be an opportunity I really don't want to miss out on. Like I said earlier, it becomes addicting once you do this long distance hiking for a little while. It's hard to get away from. It's I don't know, it's physical, it's mental, it's it feels like it's what our bodies were made for, like we get used to being cooped up in these little work, home, gym cages, and whenever you get to really experience life like that, where you just keep moving every day and you keep walking that much every day, you realize that something's not really, something's amiss here in the regular life. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out in wintertime this time. I know it doesn't really get too cold in Louisiana. I made a YouTube video where I mentioned it and I said, when it gets cold, I'll be ready to go. Well, it's not going to get too cold, but it'll be better than it was in May. Um, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to not sweating in my hammock all day. And I'll also have a little bit more money in my pocket this time. So if I want to stop at a hotel room, I know last go round, I think John paid for me to stay in a hotel. And then I was just, really in a rush to keep hiking every day because I was spending money on food and drinks. And so I didn't take my time nearly as much as I would like to. With this next go round, I feel like I'll probably take a few extra days, maybe a couple extra 0 days, and I'll spring for a hotel room maybe a couple times. Whereas, I was really pressed for cash on that last hike. So
Well,
that's
you're bringing up a good point that you were able to get through this trail and it really didn't cost a lot of money to be able to complete it. Now, of course, you mentioned John, we had a few people able to help you out a little bit here and there, but I think it's important for people to know that it's not like going on the AT and staying, in the hostels, which are great. If you have that kind of budget, that's awesome. But you don't have to have that kind of budget on the Bayou State Trail.
right.
And with that being said, you talked about how you like to take a little more time next go round. Were there some things that you noticed when you went out on the trail, different towns maybe you went through or nearby, different things you noticed where you thought to yourself, hey, you know what? When I hike this trail again, I really want to take the time out and stop here or spend a little bit more time there. Were there anything along the trail that stood out?
Yeah, there was a couple things. A couple of restaurants that I passed up that I would have really liked to stop and have a good meal at. The town that I stayed at when John paid for me to stay in that hotel,
Oh,
I was
Natchitoches.
in Natchitoches. That's right. That was a beautiful little town. It would have been great to spend another day there and walk around and really soak up that community. I was ready to get back on the horse and keep walking the next day, but that would be a town I'd want to spend more time in. Um, a couple little spots like that. I know when I got down to Morgan City, I think it would have been nice to spend an extra day in Morgan City. That'll be where I start this go round. I'll go northbound, so I'm not sure if I'll spend a whole day there. Maybe whenever, maybe I'll get there a little bit earlier in the day and then spend the day walking around and then go to sleep and wake up and start hiking. Yeah, those are, I guess, a couple towns, a couple restaurants I'd really like to spend more time in. There's, some trail systems too, like the Wild Azalea Trail. Instead of just plowing through there as fast as I could, and I'd like to spend more time there, stop and eat a meal. It's gonna be winter time, so I plan on bringing my pot and cook system and all. I didn't have that last time. It was so hot. Eating a hot meal wasn't really important to me at all. But like a spot like the Wild Azalea Trail, I'd love to sit down and boil some water and eat a nice backpacking meal right there. It's a really memorable spot on the whole trail. Um, Really reminded me of the Appalachian Trail. It's a lot of rolling hills. It wasn't mountains, but some big rolling hills where you could get some views off into the distance and some really, some pretty plant life around there. So it was really reminiscent of the Appalachian Trail. So yeah. Another reason I was moving fast, and I didn't spend as much time as I would like to in some places were just the places we had to camp. And I know that's getting better all the time and it's going to continue to improve. But there were some really sketchy spots where I had to end up sleeping last go round. I was doing some hobo camping a few times, and like basically little homeless camps where I was staying at. And those are some of the places I'd like to, go ahead and spring for a hotel room where I could get, a safe night's sleep and feel comfortable about falling asleep. And again, it's a brand new trail system, so we can't expect to have designated campsites every 10 miles like the Appalachian Trail. So, and I know it's going to be something that improves every year. So I'm looking forward to that.
Next year, it's not within every 10, but 15, in certain stretches. You had mentioned about lack of certain locations. Menden was one. I remember you were having to try to come up with a makeshift spot to camp out. And so, that's an area where, along with Natchitoches, you're walking through a town or a city, and there's a lot of amenities, and there's going to be some history there. And that's a great place to be able to spend the night, would be, in places like that. And, for people that are not from Louisiana, we know how different Louisiana is, from one corner of the state to the next. Tell me what your experience was like hiking southbound, starting all the way up near Arkansas, and what you noticed was different as you continued your through hike further along.
Well, there was several times I was surprised that the rolling hills were so big, and I have family in North Louisiana. We used to go visit when I was a kid pretty regular. And so I've drove on some of those hilly roads before, but whenever I started walking them, I was like, oh, darn, wasn't ready for it. I thought I was going to get so many miles today, but those rolling hills really slowed me down a lot more than I was expecting. So coming from North Louisiana, definitely a lot more hilly than most people would think, And as you move down to South Louisiana, it gets a lot flatter, completely flat. And a lot more buggy too, especially in the summertime. Those mosquitoes really start hitting when you get around southern Louisiana. They hit like, uh, you got some mosquitoes on the Appalachian Trail, and you got a lot of black flies too. But I feel like once you get to the lower parts of Louisiana, the bug situation gets a little bit more hardcore than I had experienced on the Appalachian Trail. Yeah, those are the two main things, I guess. The grade of trail flat versus rolling hills, and the bugs, the mosquitoes. And I think that's going to be in wintertime, it's going to be a little bit less pronounced. I don't think there'll be nearly as many mosquitoes. There will still be mosquitoes, no doubt. Like we were saying, it doesn't ever really get too cold here. Be nice if we could catch a month of really cold weather for me to hike in this winter, but I'm not really planning on it. I'm expecting just some cooler mornings and cooler evenings. I think that's going to make a big difference for me.
No doubt. Yeah. I know that the final night you were on trail, and I stayed with you at Lake End Park, just a couple of miles from the terminus. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were spraying ourselves down with Deep 100. Oh, we're okay now. No, I'm sitting on the bench and I've got mosquitoes biting me through my shorts. And you were like, come on, stand up. And you start spraying my entire body down. And I was like, man, yeah, this is not anything that most hikers are going to have to experience in the winter, not to that level. I mean, I know if it's above 60 degrees, it can happen. Mm-hmm. If it gets below 60 in the wintertime, you should be okay. But it's mainly in those sections, like you mentioned, Wild Azalea, a lot of great spots to camp out near some creeks, crystal clear mm-hmm. water. It's very popular for people to camp in those places. Those are the ones you have to still kind of be careful about if it's not that chilly, like you said. If it's just kind of mild, yeah,
Right.
you might want to keep some spray. And then that leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask you. Compared to hiking the AT, what were some things you realized that you had to maybe pack out differently or prepare differently next time you go on the Bayou State Trail compared to hiking the AT?
Well, it's gonna be winter this time. Like I said, I'm really hoping for some colder weather to hold out for me. But I think that's a real big difference that I experienced on this Bayou State Trail hike last year. It's like the temperatures, even in the summertime on the Appalachian Trail, and this is going to have to do with the mosquitoes too. Even in the summertime, you're going to get a little bit of cool weather in the morning and a little bit of cool weather in the evening, right? And then throughout the day, it'll heat up and get really hot, and that's when your mosquitoes will really start hitting. But here in Louisiana in the summertime, it was, 8 o'clock in the morning. The heat was there. It was hot.
Mhm.
And mosquitoes were there, and they were there to stay until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And the heat, well, like I said, I would sit in the hammock and sweat until probably 11 o'clock at night before I could finally fall asleep. So having that temperature difference, and like I said, even if it's summertime on the Appalachian Trail in the mountains, you get a little bit of cool weather in the morning, at night. Whereas I didn't get that on the Bayou State Trail last year, but I'm hoping for that cool weather to come in at least in the morning times and the evening times and give me a break from the heat and also a break from the bugs. So, um,
I
yeah,
want,
did I answer that question?
yeah, yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you. I wanted to kind of lead you into it because I think this is important for other hikers to know. Water.
Mhm.
Obviously, you need a lot more of it when you hiked it. So you know that you probably only need a percentage of that next time around when you winter through hike it. But how was that for you in regards to day to day in terms of water supply?
Well, the main thing that comes to mind is how hot that water got. You know, during the middle of the day after I had been walking with my water bottles for a while, I'm really hot. I'm thirsty. I want to take a break and drink some water. The water felt like it was close to boiling. Right, it was not refreshing to drink
Yeah.
at all. That was a summertime thing. Like I said again, I'm really hoping for some cooler temperatures, but and I was carrying a lot of water. I was nervous about dehydrating and overheating. Before I got on the trail last year, in my head, I was thinking, I'm not a shy person. If I get thirsty, I'll go knock on someone's door and get some water. And that was a big part of what was going through my head. But then I got out to some of these really rural places in Louisiana, and I realized it's not, a little bit easier said than done when you get to some of these rural places. A lot of the houses are sitting 75, 100 yards off the road, and they have a lot of no trespassing, beware of dog signs. So, a lot of these places, you could wander over to their door and knock if you wanted to deal with some big dogs. If you wanted to walk, 100 yards onto their driveway with no trespassing signs everywhere. And a lot of the, like I said, in a lot of the more rural places, that's the only kind of driveways you pass by. So before I got out there, I was thinking, no big deal. I'll just stop and knock on somebody's door, use their hose pipe. But then once I was out there, I was like, okay, it's a little bit more intense to go knock on somebody's driveway or their door in the middle of nowhere like this in these rural areas. And I know, like, people in Louisiana aren't expecting backpackers to be walking through this area. It's not like the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail has like maybe a 50-mile radius all the way up that trail where people are familiar with backpackers and hikers, and they really give you some leeway. A lot of people are happy to see backpackers and hikers on the Appalachian Trail as opposed to this Bayou State Trail. Most people were looking at me like I was a homeless person, right? And so to see me walking 100 yards up their driveway with all these no trespassing signs, it wouldn't have surprised me for someone to come out with a shotgun. So the uh, the water situation ended up stressing me out a lot more than I thought it would. Whenever I could, find a good spot to get water in the morning or wherever, I tried to have at least 3 liters on me. Not, for one, I didn't know when I would be able to get more. And for another reason, just, it was so hot and I was really, nervous about overheating. So if you do get into a situation where you overheat, I could have called like you or John, but it'd have been hours before somebody got out there to really help me that I knew. So that was something I was nervous about, and I think I'll be a lot more calm and collected about it in wintertime when the temperatures aren't so hot. But I'm gonna go into this next hike realizing that I need to be packing water. Um, I need to carry out as much water as I can, especially in some of these really rural areas where I'm not going to be able to count on knocking on someone's door like I thought the first go round.
Well, I'm glad you
So
bring that up because, of course, from your experience, it definitely solidified what we knew we were going to have to do. And that's making sure we have water caches lined up. And we're working on that all along the trail, where we're going to have trail angels that will basically have identical spots. We're trying to keep it simple, obviously, for them. Wherever they'll pick people up, they'll have water caches. And
mm,
so we're looking to line those things up. But I'm glad you addressed this because, and I've tried to talk about it a little bit in the videos that I've done featuring the trail. It's not like hiking on the AT or a lot of other trails that have mountains, because when you're walking through mountains, you hit those gaps where you've got tributaries, clean water running through, and it's flowing nicely, and you can filter. It's not like that on the Bayou State Trail. Now, there are a few pockets of it more in Kisatchie National Forest because it's in some of those rolling hills. But like you just said, you would leave with 3 liters every day. Now, for some folks that are listening to this, they're probably thinking, man, that's a lot of water I got to pack out with every day. Yes, but this goes back to the other part I'd like you to talk about, in the fact that you're not at any time along a stretch of the trail where it's like 5, 6 days of total wilderness, where you're not going to have access to at least walking nearby a town where you can
mhm.
resupply for food. So tell me a little bit about how that was from what you saw.
That was definitely something I really enjoyed about the trail, knowing that, just about every day, if not every day, then every other day, there was a gas station I was going to walk by. And that was a big spot where I filled up water bottles, these little gas stations, but, um, also had food at these little gas stations. So that ended up being a really big source of, you know, morale boost for me whenever I would pop into these little gas stations and get like a Gator Ice, frozen drink, and some of these chicken taquitos and fried chicken and all types of different food that you find at these gas stations around Louisiana. And we got some good gas station food.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, it was really nice being able to eat something pretty decent. And that was another reason I didn't have to worry about really packing a lot of food or cooking food when I was out there that last time, because I knew I would be hitting a gas station just about every day. There was a few days where I didn't walk by a gas station, but yeah, so that's a really enjoyable part of the trail. And I think the more that we reroutes happen and the more we can get the trail moving close to gas stations and little food places, the better.
Now, some of the stores, though, that you had come across, even if you weren't going in to buy all these things and you were just looking to get hot food, some of these stores are decent size, right? Where, like, if you really wanted to be able to get, some pasta, dry rice, maybe get some tuna or some other things, you can make do if you had to, if picking up some things along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, from my perspective, I'd rather eat the hot food as much as I could and stretch it out and take some to go and then hike a little bit longer tomorrow to make sure I could get some more hot food. But most of these gas stations have like a little grocery aisle as well where you can pick up tuna, and it's not going to have a lot of backpacking meals like maybe some Appalachian Trail stores and towns would. Um, if you were out there trying to to cook meals every day. With your backpack and stove, you might need to plan ahead of time to have a bottle of gas or that kind of thing sent to you. Um, I am planning on getting in touch with the Foundation Outdoors company again to see if they want to provide some meals for me to use. So I do, like I said, I do plan on bringing my backpack and stove and having a can of gas to use. So it's going to be an additional challenge for me this time. I might have to have John or you or somebody bring me out some gas whenever y'all come to hike with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think for the majority of the time, I'll be like eating at gas stations and trying to eat as much hot food as I can.
Well, coming now from someone that's involved in the association trying to lead the development of this trail, what are some things that you would suggest to us that you feel would provide a greater experience, or at the very least, what's necessary to provide through hikers like yourself in the future?
Well, first and foremost, the biggest thing I think is getting us on the far out, and you made that happen. So that's what I was talking about last year when I was hiking. There was several times using the Google Maps app where it just really stressed me out being in the middle of nowhere and having this line, that wasn't as accurate as I thought it was, or, and not having my little red dot on that line to show me exactly where I was. That was, like I said, a big stressor for me coming from the Appalachian Trail and being used to far out. And it's, you think, oh, it's Louisiana, there's no mountains, but there's still plenty of wilderness out here to get lost and never come back. So that was a big stressor, and you made that happen. I'm really stoked that we're going to be on far out now, and I think the more people hike it, the better, the more accurate it's going to get. I'm not exactly sure how their system works, but that's the biggest thing for sure. I think moving forward, other things we could work on are just more designated campsites, places where people feel safe camping for the night, where they don't feel like they need to hike 20 or 30 miles to make it to another safe spot. And I know that's something that's going to improve with the trail year after year. The longer it stays here, the more we get volunteers and people involved. But I know it's already improving from what it was last year as far as the designated campsites and places where I'll be able to sleep and get a comfortable night's rest.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were able to get it on far out as well. I know you had brought it up a few times, and it wasn't like we didn't want to get it on one of these apps, but when you had hiked it, for instance, John, of course, hiked most of the trail with me going back to beginning of 2025. We were still about, 60% complete on evaluating the trail directly ourselves and making sure that the route was exactly where we wanted it to be before we start turning stuff in. Like the Camp Claiborne area, for instance, I'm sure you remember going through there with John. The route that he and I had taken and hiked in March of last year, by the time you guys went out there just 3 months later, you could barely find the trail. So
It's all grown up.
yeah. So we found a much better route. And that's why I'm glad you're going to be rehiking this trail, hopefully again soon. You're going to really enjoy a couple of spots that's been rerouted. And that's one of them where it's a much clearer section that stays in good shape. And it goes back to what you're talking about. You have these lines from the Google map and people can go download it still. We're leaving it up there on the website. They can download it as a KMZ file, I think is the way you download it. And then the Gaia app, you were able to upload it to there, and that's how you hiked it. But when you get on the nature trails, it's not going to be 100% accurate because we weren't able to trace the nature trails 100% off the Google
Right.
Maps. So you could be, a quarter of a mile off. But yeah, I remember there was a couple of spots that were a little sketchy, not knowing which way to go. And now with that map, dude, that thing is 100% accurate just about on those trails.
There was a couple times where I really appreciate you and John's patience. I know at least maybe 2 times for sure where I called y'all stressing out, right? Because I knew, it would be hours and hours before anybody could get out there to get me if I couldn't figure this out. And the map I couldn't make any sense of it, So I really appreciate y'all's patience on those days. But There was a couple times there I remember where when I say my stress level was to the max, it was to the max.
Yeah, I remember a couple of them myself, and but it really does help us moving forward, knowing that, like for instance, I remember there was one in particular when you were in the northern section and you were following around Caney Lake inside the Caney district of Kisatchie. That was the sugarcane trail that you were
Yeah.
following. Well, you complete about 75% of the sugarcane trail, but you have to veer off. If
Mhm.
you do not, you're going to finish the sugarcane trail and loop back to where you started. There was a spot where you had to turn, and there was another side trail, like almost adjacent to that. I knew it myself, and I had hiked it because I helped draw the map. So I knew what I was looking for. But even I was still about 10% uncertain that, okay, is this it? So that's one spot where we know, okay, we're definitely going to have a BST, sign, triangle sign showing, hey, go this way, which of course we didn't have at
Right.
the time. But it goes to show that even with pretty good mapping, there's some spots where, having that signage, which what we're working on now next, is going to really help in those situations that could get a little dicey.
Definitely, and then being out there in summertime added an extra layer, and just a few hours of walking around without water in that heat
Mhm.
could really bring you into heat exhaustion or whatever. And that was where, like, that was what was really getting me. Like, even if I could just stay on the trail and make a whole nother loop, I only had so much water, so much clean drinking water. So if I would have some reason pass that side trail up, I wouldn't have been in the middle of the woods. I would have been on a trail, but to have to hike that entire loop again, that would have put a big strain on my water supply. So that was a real big source of stress for me whenever I had trouble with the map. And again, if people are hiking it out there in wintertime, I don't think it'll be nearly as stressful with the water situation. But yeah, like, big thanks for sticking with me and being patient on that day. I know there were several times we talked on the phone and I was stressing.
Oh, I understand. I mean, I felt bad, for you that particular day. It's like, man, he's way up near Minden. I can't help him right away. It's like a 3.5 hour drive. But, as you went through the trail, um, what were some things that you noticed that, okay, uh, I really think that they need to add this or add that. Was there anything outside of just the basics that you would look for again as a through hiker, or you're pretty much good with just the fact that as long as I have transportation options, if I absolutely need something, camping options and water? Or are there any other things you could think of?
Those are the main things. And some signage, like you just
Yeah.
mentioned, some signs, some regular blazes, just to, you know, blazes or markers, however we do it. Whenever you can see one of those every few hundred yards and just reassure yourself, oh, I'm in the right spot. That
Mhm.
takes a lot of stress off the table. Um, and something you can take for granted on the Appalachian Trail. I say take it for granted. There's sections on the Appalachian Trail where they haven't got to do the maintenance or this or that. When you go a while without seeing a blaze, it starts to get a little iffy. Like, whoa, 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 where are my
Yeah.
blazes now? Um, and as long as you have the Far Out app or an app that's working good, you can pull it out and look at your cursor. But there are times or instances where your phone disconnects or where you don't have service, and that's another good thing about Far Out. Typically that cursor follows your steps whether you have service or not. You can leave your phone in airplane mode and still see that red dot following the trail, and yeah, that's a really, really big stress relief. But yeah, I think those are the main things. Having signs, signage, and markers, and designated campsites that aren't too far apart, and places to get water, water caches. Those are going to be the biggest things.
Okay. So for anyone out there that's considering hiking the trail, what would you say to them?
Don't do it in summertime. I think if you really want to challenge yourself, if you want to see how rough you can get it, then summertime will be great. you really want that extra challenge. But if you're coming out to enjoy this trail and, see what Louisiana has to offer, then you're going to get a lot more out of it in the wintertime for sure. It is really rare for Louisiana to get snow. I think we did a couple years ago when I was hiking Appalachian Trail, so I wasn't here for it, but really rare for us to get snow or even really cold weather. But so I don't think, a wintertime hike, you're not going to need a bunch of extra clothes or gear. I may I may bring like a super thin underquilt for my hammock if I was going to use the hammock in the wintertime, but I think you'd still be able to get your pack weight so light and so minimal because just generally it's not cold in Louisiana, and if it is, it'll just be at night. And yeah, by the time midday hits, it's going to be hot again. Generally, all the time. I'm saying that now. Maybe we'll get this crazy cold spell this year coming, but
It's hard to say, as you know, but they are predicting slightly colder temperatures this year. Might have a little more rain come with it when you get that colder weather. But I know
right.
from just all the years I've been hiking, and I'm not, as you know, someone that's going to go out tomorrow and go hike. I'm not. I'm not doing. I don't care if it's 3 miles. I'm not doing 95 degrees. That's just not happening. My body just does not react well to heat. So I've always been that November through April, definitely March time frame. And what's nice is you can just normally just have a light jacket if it's like really chilly, like if it got down into the 40s at night. Rarely it gets into the 30s. That's when it's really chilly for us. So you don't have a thick jacket you have to put on. So that would be the thickest layer. And then I normally just wear a long sleeve shirt. And I don't even normally get a regular long sleeve that's with cotton. I like the dry fit type. If you sweat, it dries up real fast. It doesn't stick to you all day long. And a short
Right.
sleeve underneath. On most normal days, I would say that by, noon, if I started hiking like at 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that, probably even a little bit before that, I'm down to my short sleeve shirt. Now, it might be 63 degrees at that point, and that's kind of like a normal high, in say like December, January, February. And so
Mhm.
it's real comfortable. It's almost like springtime in a lot of the parts of the country. You may still have some days that'll crack 80. If we've had cold weather come down, but then that front leaves, what happens is the winds change out of the south, comes from the Gulf, humidity picks back up, all that nice stuff. And so it does tend to limit the amount of layer of clothing you need, where it might still need to be a long sleeve for a couple of hours when you first get up. But yeah, rest of the day, I mean, it's, shorts and a t-shirt for the most part. If you like wearing shorts, of course, we know it's not always a good idea when you get into the thick woods to, not have some pants on, because even in January, you can get some ticks.
Right, right. Well, me and John actually went hiked. Uh, where did we go? Oh, Chico, maybe a month
Yeah.
or two ago now. And these little seed ticks, man, they got me bad. And then he sent me a video last week. He went on a little day hike, and they got to him, and they went right through our socks. Right, took the socks off after the hike, and just little black dots everywhere. And when I used my cell phone to zoom in on them, then I could tell they were ticks or pop. I was thinking maybe chiggers because they were so small. But after seeing John's feet the other day when he sent me that video, I think maybe they were like little seed ticks. I don't know. I'm going back and forth in my head, but yeah. So that's definitely an issue, and I'm definitely looking forward to less of that to worry about in the wintertime. It's one thing to just see a regular size tick on you and pull it off. It's another thing when they're damn near microscopic and you start to think, where else are they that I can't see them? You know what I mean? So, yeah, hopefully that's not going to be as much of an issue in the wintertime. And I know, just from North Louisiana to South Louisiana, it's going to be a little bit of a temperature difference up there in those rolling hills in North Louisiana. It's definitely going to be a little bit chillier, and I'm expecting that. Whereas down in South Louisiana, where it's a lot flatter, expecting warmer temperatures for winter. But probably a big difference on the bugs too. I imagine wintertime or summertime, we're going to have more bugs down south, more mosquitoes, and that's probably going to taper off as I get up there towards North Louisiana. I'm looking forward to this different perspective too, catching it northbound. It would have been cool to yo-yo and do it all at once, but I think it'll be cool just the same to check it out going northbound this time and see everything the other way.
Absolutely. Well, man, I tell you what, I'm really excited about how things are going for you. Glad to see you back in Louisiana, and looking forward to hooking up with you again at some point. And hopefully maybe being able to play that trail angel role again a little bit this time around, and then hopefully even more so, at least being able to at least go on a day hike with you. And again, we really appreciate you just putting yourself out there like you did when you did and promoting the trail, because I see the comments all the time, people that will email us and sometimes drop us messages on Facebook that a lot of them have said, yeah, I watched Captain Jack hike the trail. So your hike last year was a huge contribution in getting more exposure to people out there about this thing. And I really think that, as time goes on, it's just going to be a much greater experience for not only you, for everyone else.
No, I definitely appreciate hearing that. I'm glad I could, be a part of this. I know I said that in one of my last videos that I made. It feels really good to be a part of something new like this that's developing and really has the potential to do so much. At the time, it was definitely, it was cool to get involved in something new, but it was also, like I said, it was my selfish needs to get back out there and have a long walk that wasn't somewhere far out of state, somewhere I could afford on the tight budget I was on. So, yeah, it definitely great to be a part of this thing and see how far we can get it to go. I look at the Florida Trail and the Arizona Trail and the Colorado Trail, and I feel like we could have the same thing here. We have so much for this state to show, to offer other people. And yeah, even though this is just the beginning, I'm really excited about where it's going.
Thank you, man. Well, it was great talking to you today. And definitely let's hook up soon and get out on the trail together.
Definitely, man. Pleasure to talk to you.
You too, man. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.